send out an email saying red paper.
So everybody, I write those emails over the weekend or on Monday. And sometimes on the fly in class, I decide to alter the assignment. And so do what I tell you in class. But if I tell you we're not doing this, but then you get an email saying we're doing this, it's because I wrote that email several days ago. And I didn't realize that we're going to run out of time, or I was just going to decide that I didn't like that assignment anymore and I'm just going to cancel it. Okay? So that, don't worry about that. Let's actually talk about the papers that you're working on first before we dive into the end. And so last week I asked you to write down as many reasons as you can think of, yes or no, whether Aeneas should have left Dido or not. And as a group, we did a lot of these together. I hope that you had a chance to maybe add to that list. I don't know, we have enough people in this room. You know, if it was half the people, we would go around and everybody would share something. Everybody get your list, open up to your list. And here's what we're gonna do. Okay. Here's what we're gonna do. Do you have lots of stuff on your list?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So what we're gonna do, just to help some people out that maybe don't have a lot of things on their list, we're just gonna share some things that we came up with, just briefly. And you are free to copy these, okay? Write them down, it's okay. Not cheating, all right? So is there anyone that has a reason, maybe something you came up with that we didn't talk about together? Alex?
The Punic Wars would never have happened if Rome and Carthage had combined.
So is that a yes or a no? Do you like them to have happened?
I mean, people died, so it's, was Aeneas right to leave Dido? I would say no.
Okay, so could we use it for both though? So, hey, there's just a lot of just commotion that is just echoing a lot today. Just a second, Cal, don't forget it. Okay, just a second. Just to let everyone know, we've talked several times about this. The Punic Wars are a series of wars that Rome is going to have with Carthage later. And Carthage is going to lose, and badly. So Alex is saying, if Aeneas doesn't leave, there will be no war with Carthage.
There'll be no.
Well, but yes, but right now we're concentrating on this, which means fewer deaths, fewer orphans in the world.
Add a little complimentary sniff in there.
But if you want to hate Carthage, if you feel like Carthage was wicked and it should be wiped off the face of the earth, and honestly, these people were from Phoenicia, which is the place where they worship Baal and Moloch in the Bible. Moloch is the god where it says, and they put their babies through the fire. They burned their babies in fire for Moloch. So we say, yes, he should leave because Carthage should be destroyed.
Carthage sucks.
True.
Because they are evil idol worshippers. And I know you say all idol worshippers are evil, but these are more evil than the normal idol worshippers, okay? It was bad.
They sacrificed their babies.
They sacrificed their babies. So, see, how you feel about Carthage, this can be a reason on both sides. Okay, Kyle.
So, another yes, that it would change history by not having Punic Wars, there'd be more Romans and maybe more of the world would be conquered.
Okay, so no war with Carthage mean, well, except there would be no Rome.
Well, maybe the Romans would have become the Carthaginians.
Oh, so if he doesn't leave, the Romans will be absorbed into Carthage. So the Romans would become Carthaginians. And that would be bad, and that would be, we need to explain that. That would be bad for the world
What?
because Carthaginians are wicked.
And the whole reason that Christianity became a thing is because of Rome. Because it was sent into Rome. Because they had.
Oh, okay. Can I add that? Can I add that? Because I'm eavesdropping on your conversation. Ethan said that Rome was the path for Christianity. The Roman peace was the peace that made it possible for Paul and the other apostles and the early missionaries after the apostolic fathers that came in the next generation to spread the gospel. So yes, he should leave because Rome creates peace for spread of gospel.
I think we're forgetting that Rome was pagan. There wasn't much
I know,
difference
so they
between.
had an easier way of transporting it to Rome because it wasn't as.
You know what?
It's not as big as
Can we visit that? Like, because later this semester we're actually going to talk about the difference. Alex.
I wouldn't say that Rome would have never happened. I would, because Rome was gonna happen whether they liked it or not, because the gods were gonna have someone else do it.
Well, okay, so let's say someone else could have done Rome.
I know, but still it would have happened.
We'll just put that.
If the gods were real.
Well,
Yeah.
It actually would have happened actually already, because if God knew what was gonna happen in the future,
Oh,
if
we're
it
talking
wasn't-
about
if it-
God. Okay.
yeah, because the thing is that it still would have happened. So there's no way Rome could have not have been a thing, because God knew that Rome was gonna be a thing.
Okay, or, I mean, but people could argue the other side too, that if Aeneas slips the chance,
He's
that
not gonna
the
be
ship
able
has
to,
sailed.
he's not gonna get that glory. Someone else will take it.
Possibly.
I decided to take psychology as in the circumstance for this.
Okay.
So if he wanted to leave and actually talk to her about it, she would probably threaten to kill herself. That is called emotional blackmail, which is psychologically an abusive type of relationship. So that should be under the yes. He should.
It wasn't.
He should leave because she was emotionally blackmailing him.
Yeah, and it would just be an abusive relationship.
Okay, so we're gonna say they have a toxic relationship. I like this. And Dido uses emotional blackmail on him, which is just a red flag that you need to get out of there. I like that example.
Understanding the fact that like if the Romans being Carthaginians, that would be really sad because not only do you have like the Roman / Trojan kind of deal, but then you're also having big sacrifices throughout your entire
Yes, and that's the
life.
reason he should leave, because we don't want that to happen.
We don't want that.
That's why I put that under yes.
And Carthage wasn't very moderate in their spending and their
They were-
lavish
They
dress.
were lavish, they were lavish.
We were loud.
Okay, we're gonna do one more.
And actually, in perfect response with that, I would have said that having the Trojans in would bring that Roman virtue into a rich Carthaginian world.
Okay, so on the flip side, he could bring Roman virtue into Carthage and make them better.
Ooh, I think I would do that.
Okay, yeah, well, yeah, I said
We're
one more,
gonna-
but we know that's never true.
We're done.
So two more. No, I like Congo too, but you can do it.
Okay, so to counter that, he was already dressing all lavish and stuff like Carthage anyway.
That's true, that's true. I'm not gonna put that on there, but that would be a good reputation point. Yes, Kyle.
So, if they stayed in Carthage, would they have changed Carthage to be Roman?
Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
So, wouldn't the beliefs of the Romans change the pagan beliefs of the?
Well, see, that's the thing. You can argue both ways if you want to. Because, you know, here's the lovely thing about reasons that didn't happen, about using relationship and circumstance, what might happen, what is happening other places, what could happen other, you kind of use your imagination. You can twist it, you can argue both ways. So hopefully Does everybody, if you don't have a lot of things on your paper, hopefully you see how we're generating these. We are basically letting our imaginations run wild and saying, what happen? What did happen? What would happen if the other side came to pass? Here's what I'd like you to do this week for me. Everybody in your reading guide, could you turn to page 121? Can I erase these? Is we okay?
Yes, the champion.
Yes.
He's the one. Oh, it was 1-1. I thought it was 1.
This week, we are going to outline the paper that we are going to write. I'm also going to ask you to write another one of those short summas, but we'll talk about that later. Hey, guys, this table just needs to calm down a little bit because of the echo, all right? And I'm going to show you how to outline your paper. Honestly, writing a paper, the hardest things are thinking of something to say, I think, and organizing your thoughts. And after you think of something to say and you have it organized, your paper is almost written. You just have to write it out in sentences. So that last week and this week are probably the biggest hurdles. So we're going through this paper slowly. This week we're just going to do an outline for this. And on page 121, I have given you the paragraphs. All right? You see there's 6 paragraphs. And if you turn to page 123, each of these sections is defined. All right, what's in it? But let's just take a look at each of these sections, okay? First of all, you will have an introduction. So this week, remember, we're just doing an outline. We're just jotting down ideas about what we're going to put in our paper. Our first paragraph will be an introduction. And what goes in an introduction? First of all, we're going to flip back and forth, okay? On 123, it says the first thing that happens is we inform our reader, make our reader favorably disposed to us, or draw them in. You know, if you write something, you would like someone to read it. Now, I'm going to read it if you write it, no matter what. But if you were writing a magazine article or a newspaper article or something like that, you want to catch them right at the beginning, or they're just going to put it down and read something else. Especially if you want to persuade them that you have an idea they should agree with. So how can we do that? Well, you can ask your reader a question. Have you ever been in a place of luxury and comfort and found it hard to leave because you had a dirty job to do? Have you ever had to leave someone you love because duty called you away? Can you imagine what it would be like to have to break someone's heart to obey an order? And see, instantly when you ask the question, your reader thinks, oh, I can imagine. Yes, that has happened to me. And you've drawn them in. You can challenge them to imagine something. Imagine this situation. Imagine this happens to you. And it draws them in. You could use a quote. It doesn't have to be a quote from the Aeneid. It can be any quote about doing one's duty, being obedient, or not dumping your loved ones, you know, depending on which side you're arguing. You could give a very brief, I'm talking 2 or 3 sentences, story that illustrates it, a parable, or a real life story, or an example from another book or a movie. Right. So that's one thing we want to do. So the first thing you need to do when you're making your outline is, how am I going to catch attention? You would write the word catch attention. You would write down a question you thought of, you know, or a quote you found, something like that. What's the next thing we do? The backstory or the narratio. The backstory is whatever your reader needs to know to make it make sense, make your paper make sense. So I need to know a few things. Maybe I need to know there's a poem called the Aeneid by Virgil. I could actually live without knowing that. I kind of need to know there's a guy named Aeneas, and he's a Trojan, and he gets to Carthage, and he stays with Dido. But the gods say leave. Would you say that's kind of the minimum I need to know to make sense of the question, should he leave? There's a guy, he's honest, maybe that he's supposed to wander on. We could throw that in there too. But I could do this in 2 or 3 sentences. You don't need a whole paragraph. Don't tell me the whole story of the Trojan War and the night Troy fell and the Trojan horse, and please don't tell me all of that. I don't need to know all of that. I just need to know the character, where he's from, where he's going, and where he stopped, and why, right? So that's my narratio. We get the word narration. I'm just telling you back the part of the story that you need to know. And the third thing that goes in our introduction is what's called the divisio. It is, and you would write this. I'm going to write state your position. In other words, at this place in your outline, you're going to write, Aeneas should leave, or Aeneas should not leave, whichever one you've chosen to argue. So right away, if I'm writing too small,
What's the second thing understated?
yeah, you can,
The other point understated.
gods say, stays with Dido, gods say leave. So just jot down on your outline what side you've chosen to defend. He should leave or he shouldn't leave. And after that, give me 3 reasons. Proofs. We're going to call them proofs, okay? Proof 1, proof 2, proof 3. Now, here's where you're going to have to spend some time with your list. Yes, Kat?
You said at least 3, can you do more than 3, or is there a max? Or-
No, you can always do more than 3. It just makes your paper longer. It expands your paper. But you still need to do it in this form, okay?
Yes.
That we're going to talk about.
What's your like max?
I don't care.
Well, if you have
If you want to write a 10
you can
page,
also-
if you want to write a 10-page paper on this, I will read it. That's my vow.
Okay.
You have guys, you have a list of really good reasons for and against, hopefully. Maybe you have more on one side than the other side of your list. Most people naturally do. You kind of feel one way or the other way. But you're going to need to choose 3 of them, but you're going to need to not just choose any 3. You're going to need to choose 3 that are big reasons. Because in your next, I'm turning on my board, in your next 3 paragraphs, you are going to list proof 1, proof 2, and proof 3. And then each of these is going to have 3 supports. And you can probably find all of these on your list. But let me give you an example of what I mean by a big proof, okay? I argue this. Aeneas should leave Dido because she always burns dinner. I just made that up. Okay, so, okay, A, I don't think you should leave people just because they're bad cooks. But even if that were okay, I would have a really hard time coming up with 3 supports on leaving her because she burned dinner. Do you see my problem? Or he should leave her because she had a bad hair day. And to argue that, I'm really going to have to go into like shampoo products and stuff. It would be silly. But here's a big proof. He needs to leave because he has a destiny to found Rome. Now, that's a big reason. And now I have lots of support for that. He had omens back in Troy that told him to leave. I could talk about those for a little bit. Mercury came to visit him and tell him to leave. His dad told him in the underworld to leave, and he saw all of his descendants. You see, I have a lot of ammunition to argue that he has a destiny, but I don't have very much ammunition to argue that burning dinner or having a bad hair day is a good reason to leave. It's a really tiny reason. If I want to argue the other way, he should not leave. You know, he should not leave because she gave him that awesome cloak, the purple cloak with the gold thread. That's a very small reason. I would have a lot of trouble finding supporting reasons for that reason.
That would be like a subgroup for Carthage is rich.
Okay, so, but that would be that's the Carthage is rich and comfortable. That's a big reason. And then I can say, like, she gave him awesome clothing. She offered him part of the kingdom, said he could be co-ruler with her. He offered places for his men. She wanted to take care of Ascanius and be his stepmom and love him. And see, that's good support for Carthage is rich, or Dido was kind. That's a big reason. Does that make sense to everybody, the difference? So what you're looking for on your list, some of your things on your list, your yes-no list, are going to be big like that, and some of them are going to be tiny, because I told you to write down anything. Look for the big ones, 3 big ones, and then I bet if you read through, you'll find little ones that are related to that. Did you notice that when I made our charts, I even sometimes put like I had a reason and I put sub-reasons under? Use that. And if you can't find one, if you can't find 3 reasons for this to be a good proof, you might need a new proof, because it's not a very strong proof, is it? Dido is kind, Carthage is rich. Those are easy to prove. So choose ones like that. Does that make sense? So this week, write those down. Go over your list and organize it. Say, this is what I'm going to argue. These are going to be my 3 big reasons. And then I have 3 little reasons for each of these. And I'll bet you'll find them on your list. Or not very hard to find in your head if you can't find just what you want. Yes.
And try to separate them so you're not overlapping.
Yeah. Although sometimes they do have overlap.
Yeah.
And you know what? That can make your argument stronger too.
Mhm.
So that's okay. But
Dido's kind and Carthage is rich, sort of like the same idea topic.
it is, but you could separate it because we have a lot of evidence that Carthage is rich, and it's nice to live somewhere rich. But it's also, for other reasons, nice to live where people are kind. So,
Is kind of connecting all of your subgroups together, so that it makes it seem like you're not just saying, I think this because here's my proof, and this.
yes,
Cool.
yes.
You want to connect all this.
Yeah, it's nice, but if you've never done a paper like this before, just giving me 3 reasons is awesome. And then as we get more experience, we can learn to join them together. Yeah.
You have to do all 3 yes reasons?
No, we're arguing one side.
Okay.
So they're all 3, but you get a chance to argue the other side next. Because the next thing in your outline is the reputation. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to state opposing argument. Where do you get an opposing argument? From your yes-no chart. You already wrote arguments for the other side because you did both sides already. So choose one of them. Here's what it would sound like. I'm arguing yes, he should leave. That's going to be my position. But I say, well, you might say he should stay because Carthage was so rich. Some people might say he should stay because Carthage is rich. Then here's what you do. You refute it. If someone came to you and said, no, Aeneas should stay because Carthage is rich, how would you answer them? But money isn't everything. The will of the gods is more important than money. Money doesn't buy happiness. You know, and people, when you live where they're rich, you know, they get luxuries, they get lazy. Lazy people live in rich cities. This doesn't want to become lazy. So I argue back, and then I do it again. I state another opposing argument. I'm just going to put R.
So do you have to have 3 refutes for each other statement or just?
No, just one.
Okay.
And then you do it again. So if you're arguing yes, he should leave, look at your no list and pick one. Pick a good one. Pick a good, strong argument for the other side. And then ask yourself, well, if somebody argued that side, how would I defend myself? And do it. And then pick another one. How would I defend myself? Aeneas should not leave because it will break Dido's heart. Well, Dido is toxic. First of all, she's half whacked because she's all spelled from the Cupid's arrow thing. She's nuts. And you don't want to spend too much time with people who are in a bad frame of mind. You know, it might twist Aeneas's mind to hang out with somebody like that. And there's just no telling what somebody in that state of mind might do if he makes her angry. Argue against it. Then the final paragraph is just your conclusion, in which you restate your 3 proofs. These proof 1, proof 2, and proof 3. They say, I know some of you have heard this from me before, but I'll say it again. They say that if you really want someone to remember what you say or write, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And so they get to hear it 3 times, and maybe they will remember something. Because we're all kind of dizzy, you know. Pay much attention. You may have one of these proofs that you consider just irrefutable. It's your golden proof. And you might want to say, state which is most important. And then finally, the very hardest thing of all on a paper like this, the amplification, which means who cares? Who cares? Why are we even talking about this? Now, if I were writing a paper about recycling, I'm arguing that you should recycle things. Well, that's easy. The world cares because we need to save the environment, right? Okay? But it's hard to argue why Aeneas leaving Dido is just a pressing concern to you or the modern world. I get papers very frequently that say, Mrs. Ferguson cares about this. She made me write this paper. Not exactly in those words, but that's the general idea. But I feel like we need to look at the deeper issues maybe. This is a man making promises to a woman and leaving. I might say relationships matter because the state of relationships in the modern world is really bad. Divorce rate is high. You got an idea?
My class last year, they would write stuff like that, and one of the things was this matters to me because I wrote it.
It matters. History. Okay, because change history. Because, and then we can take that off our yes/no chart. Because Rome gave rise to Christianity. Rome, you know what I mean. It was in the environment of Rome that Christianity blossomed and flowered. So that can be the who cares and why. That can be a little tricky. That can be difficult. So I want everyone to understand what I want you to do this week. I don't want you to write the paper. I only want you to get ideas. So where I put state your position, state your position. Where I put the proofs, put your proofs. This really amounts to going over the ideas you've already written down and organizing them. That's why this step is called arrangement. Our first step was invention, finding things out from our brain. This is arranging. Some of you are good, you're just very orderly, and it's easy to arrange things and thoughts and ideas. Some of you, maybe not so orderly, and this is a hard step. But this is all I want you to do. Come back next week with an outline. And here's what I'd like. For most of you, I think you'll be fine. and you'll find your proofs. But if you have trouble, bring it and please ask me. Because when we leave here next week, I don't want anyone to feel like it's going to be a hard paper to write. Okay? You should have an outline. Say, all I got to do is just turn this into a paper. I've got 6 paragraphs. Great. You should have your ideas down. And if that's a problem for you, if you get stuck, first of all, you can always call or email me. I don't know what to do for the third group. Here's an idea, but I don't know how to work it in. I will help you. Or bring it to me next week, okay? So that everybody's good. Have I said everything makes sense? Any questions? Okay. I would also, because I know this will take some time, but I decided to nix last week's summa. So I would like you to write a paragraph, another one of these paragraphs for me. Just one paragraph. And here's what, can I erase this? Are we all okay? I would like you to write a paragraph answering this question, which we're also going to talk about today in class. And it is this. Is King Latinus a good king? This is a very broad question. We're gonna talk about it a little bit, and you're gonna see maybe where I'm going with this. But you know, the first thing I look at as I think of my common topics, I think definition. Well, what's a good king? What makes someone a good king? What are the characteristics? You might have to think about that before you decide. Yeah.
Who's he?
King Latinus is the king, the father of Lavinia. He's the king that they make an alliance with in Latium after they land in Italy. And you know what? If he has slipped your mind, we're going to be talking about it today. So you will remember. Okay, so I would like you to write that and do an outline. Also, next week we're going to finish the Aeneid. And that, now you have all the assignments. We can just let her rip and look at our questions, which are back on page 11. I still don't have a clock. I think I'm never going to. Can I erase that too? Okay. Next thing, I'm going to move on to the rest of the time. So we have talked a lot so far about Aeneas being pious, that he has pietas, which means he has reverence for his fathers and his duty and the gods, and he's obedient. He lays aside his own will and he does what he's been told to do. But there is a opposite, and it is furor. And you know, we get the word fury, furious. Furor is really a kind of madness for the Romans. It's when you are so caught up in what you want and your own thing, you just lose it. We already met someone in the grip of furor. Who was it? Dido. Now somebody yesterday said, well, it wasn't her fault. I'm like, okay, furor doesn't have to be your fault. It's just the state that you're in, furor. And so we met 3 people this week, 2 people. Dido was the 3rd. Can you think of someone you read about this week in the poem that was in the grip, it was kind of over the edge, upset?
Is it I don't remember his name, but the guy that, Aeneas, you know, yeah, I don't remember.
Okay.
Was it Turnus?
Turnus is one. Turnus, who goes ballistic, as they say, when he finds out that Lavinia is going to get given to this stranger, and starts a full-out war over it. And we're going to go through the poem, and you're going to see he's described as being in the grip of madness. Somebody else, actually, this is one of my questions. I'm doing your second question. That Fury Electo visits Turnus. It's like she's got snaky hair, and she breaks off snakes and she throws them on him, and the snake burrows in and makes him go nutso. It's creepy. She does it to Turnus, and she does it to someone else the same night. Do you
His
remember?
mother.
Yes. Lavinia's mother, Latinus' wife, Amata. And she just goes bonkers when she finds out that Lavinia isn't going to marry Turnus. What? I have a plan. And she goes nuts, full out nuts. They are furious in the Latin sense. They are over the edge, yes.
Do you think that perhaps the Aeneid is based off, at least partly, from real life?
I mean, there's nothing, except for the trip to the underworld,
Yeah,
there's nothing.
but that's just like a random Greek thing to do.
Yeah, I'm great, got to go to the underworld. But, no, it's something that couldn't be.
Just go.
I mean, things like this happen.
Yeah. So them getting attacked by snakes and then going insane.
Oh.
Do you
See,
think
sounds-
that they were?
It sounds a bit
actually-
like what we call demonic possession.
Oh, that's not what I was thinking.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking like just being poisoned by a snake and then having a berserk reaction to
No.
it.
Poisoning by snakes often just makes you die, though.
Right, yeah, I'm not sure, but
I don't
yes,
know.
maybe it's that
I'm
too.
not a snake expert, I don't know. Here's our picture, and I'm going to pass it around even though I know that it will distract you a little bit from my talking, because it's just so hard to see. This is another French painting, 1681. Landscape with Ascanius shooting the stag of Sylvia. Yay. He actually painted more than one picture on Aeneid themes. And I'm going to pass it around. You'll see Aeneas and his crew, or Ascanius, I'm sorry, Aeneas' son and his crew. And over here is Sylvia's stag. He's just shot an arrow at it and killed it. Which is going to bring on war, full-scale war, because it was her pet deer. It used to come in the house. She used to pet it and feed it. She's so sad. And instead of saying, you know, guys, this was my daughter's pet deer, you should go apologize to her. No, let's kill each other. Let's just have a war. What happens? But
These people
of
have no
course,
wisdom.
Electo the Fury. So here's what I want you to notice. I mean, it's a beautiful landscape, but it's kind of very muted and pastel, and so it's hard to see from the distance. The trees are bending over in the breeze. Do you see the trees bending over? And you see on this side dark clouds are moving in. This is not a coincidence. The storm clouds are rolling in, the winds are rising because war is headed their way. This is code for war is coming. So take a glance at it. And I said that that's the full name, I think. You can Google these two if you ever really fall in love with one of these paintings and want to gaze at it from the computer screen. Like I said, he did more than one painting in the late 1600s about Aeneas. But let's take a look. Let's dive into book 7 while that goes around. Why does Latinus, King Latinus, decide to give his daughter Lavinia to Aeneas?
He wanted to fulfill the prophecy.
Because
Yes, both look. There were prophecies he had to fulfill, he was told to. In book 7, they finally show up at in Italy. Oh, before we talk about this, I'd like to mention something at the beginning of book 7. If this poem has 12 books, and we're at the end of book 6 and starting book 7, where are we? Halfway. We're halfway. And you probably noticed, and also because I said it, that a lot of the first 6 books is very Odyssey-like. They're visiting the underworld, and they're on the ocean, and they're having storms, and they're visiting harpies and weird things. So if we knew that he's doing sort of an Iliad Odyssey mashup, we might think, oh, maybe the Odyssey part is coming to an end, and the Iliad part is going to start. Maybe the second half.
Which is kind of weird because the Iliad comes before the Odyssey.
But that's the story of the war, and then the man leaves. This is the story of the man leaves, and then he has to settle through war. But here's what Virgil says: "Be with me, muse of all desire, Erato, while I call up the kings, the early times, how matters stood in the old land of Latium, that day when the foreign soldiers beached upon Ausonia's shores, and the events that led to the first fight. Immortal one," he's still talking to the muse, "immortal one, bring all in memory to the singer's mind, for I must tell of wars to chill the blood, ranked men in battle, kings by their own valor driven to death, Etruria's cavalry, and all Hesperia mobilized in arms. A greater history opens before my eyes. A greater task awaits me." Virgil says, everything I wrote before this was just the beginning. I need more inspiration from the muses because I'm about to tell you the story of something even greater. Because if you think it's awesome that Aeneas escaped Troy and made it through all those obstacles, then this is even greater because this is going to be wrong. And so they show up in Italy, and we meet King Latinus, who's been having a lot of weird experiences of late. First of all, he was looking on a branch and a bunch of bees just clustered on the branch. I think it's been all around, Kyle. A bunch of bees clustered on the branch, and we're all hanging down from the branch, which I don't know anything about bees. That's an abnormal thing. I've never actually witnessed a bunch of bees hanging from a branch. And he went to a soothsayer, a prophet. And of course, the prophets can read all of these things. It says, "In this we see a stranger's advent, a body of men moving to the same spot from the same zone to take our fortress." So apparently, just like all the bees came and they just stayed in one spot, a bunch of guys are going to come and stay in one spot. Then his daughter's head started glowing, which always, this happens a lot, apparently. Eulus, you remember, had the little flame of fire on his head. Well, Lavinia, his daughter's hair starts glowing.
Rapunzel.
It's no word on if they threw a bucket of water over the head to put it out. I want to know those details, but Virgil doesn't tell me. And so they go to the prophets again, and he's told, "Propose no Latin alliance for your daughter, son of mine. Distrust the bridal chamber now prepared. Men from abroad will come and be your sons in marriage." Okay? So when they get there, he already knows, I'm on the lookout for some stranger to show up. And lo and behold, a bunch of strangers show up. And they send an embassy to Latinus and say, "Look, the gods sent us here. We don't want any trouble with you. We don't want to take any. Would you just allow us a spot of land to build our place and settle down? We're refugees. We're just looking for a home. We don't come with any aggressive intent." And it says, Latinus heard Ilioneus out. This is the ambassador from Aeneas. "His countenance averted, sitting immobile, all attention, eyes downcast, but turning here and there." Sitting immobile, all attention, eyes downcast, but turning here and there. He's listening, he's thinking. What do you think he's thinking? Why is he immobile with his eyes downcast? Think about it. I've had these prophecies. Okay, well, maybe these are the guys. I don't know. I hope so, but if I give my daughter to this guy, what's going to happen? There's another guy, Turnus. He's pretty sure he's the new son-in-law and probably the next king. What's going to happen? He's listening. He's got a terrible choice. lose, you know. If he says no, you can't have my daughter, you can't live here, the gods will not like that. And if he says yes, Turnus is going to be ticked off. He doesn't know about the fury thing yet. He knows it's not going to turn out well, maybe.
I don't really reflect that he is the king because he's trying to think about his daughter and his kingdom and, you know, what's gonna happen. You know, he's just being protected. He's being protected.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is what kings should do.
Kings have a lot on their plates, don't they? Because they have to think about everybody, not just their family, not just themselves, but the good of the whole state. So he makes the choice. And it says, this is the man, he thought, foretold as coming from abroad to be my son-in-law, as by fate appointed, called to reign here with equal authority, the man whose heirs will be brilliant in valor and win the mastery of the world. So he says, yes, you may live here. I want to meet your leader Aeneas. I want to shake hands on him. I want to meet him face to face. And I have a daughter, and I've been shown by prophecy that I need to give him my daughter. Juno sees the whole thing, and she is not amused at all. She says, I am defeated, and by Aeneas. Well, if my powers fall short, I need not falter over asking help wherever help may lie. I'll go stir up a fury. They're nasty pieces of work, but I'm going to get one to work for me. And she says this, and this is just the pettiest thing in this whole thing. To keep the man from rule in Italy by changeless fate. Oh, I'm sorry, I started the middle of the sentence. It will not be permitted to me, so be it, to keep the man from rule in Italy. By changeless fate, Lavinia waits his bride. And yet, to drag it out, to pile delay upon delay in these great matters, that I can do. To destroy both countries' people, that I can do. So I had my 6-year-old niece at my house on Monday for a cookout for Labor Day. And I have more plastic animals than any household should have because my children love plastic animals. I mean, huge stuff. And she gets them out and she puts them into groups, all the dinosaurs together and the sharks together. So her dad says, we'll pick them up. One at a time, slow as you can. She cannot, it is not permitted her to not put the animals away and leave, but she will pile delay upon delay. This is like a small child to me, picking up their toys. She says, yeah, he's going to win in the end, but I'll make him miserable till then. So she goes to Alecto, whose name I misspelled in the question. This has bothered me very, very much the whole week. So I asked you what 3 things she did, and we basically already said them. Do you remember what they are? She makes 2 visits and then another thing.
She goes and to the other world, looks like, this is Fury person, help me out.
Yes, but where does the Fury go? 3 places. Who are the 2 people I said get stirred up by a Fury?
What was her name? Oh, shoot.
Just tell me who she is.
Amata.
Her mother.
Amata. Yeah, that's one of them. Do you have another one? Oh, you're gonna say Amata? Okay, so Lavinia's mother, Amata. Turnus. And then the 3rd thing she does is stirs up the incident. Here. What page? Did you ask?
Yeah.
Which one? The Amata one? Or the which of the 3 are you looking for here? It is on page 213. It's line like starting at 655. A-N-A. Yeah, it says that she, oh, I gotta read it because it's just so horrible. What does it say? Okay. She's dripping deadly venom, deadly as the gorgons from these snaky things. She plucked one of the snakes, her gloomy tresses, and tossed it at the woman, sent it down her bosom to her midriff and her heart, so that by this black reptile driven wild she might disrupt the whole house. Ooh! And the serpent slipping between her gown and her smooth breasts went writhing on, though imperceptible to the fevered woman's touch or sight. Apparently it's not, you can't see it with your eyes, and breathed viper's breath into her. The sinuous mass became her collar of twisted gold, became the ribbon of her headdress. In her hair it twined itself and slid around her body, while the infection first, like dew of poison fallen on her, pervaded all her senses. Oh, it goes on. I'm even stopping for time, but it goes on. It's creepy.
Wow.
That's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
Very disgusting.
And she loses it. She runs to her husband, Latinas, and says, I cannot believe that you are going to renege on your promise to Turnus. You don't know where this guy has been. He may be an outlaw. He may be a horrible person. He just showed up here, and you're going to marry your daughter to him. I can't believe it. And yes, and she said,
Honestly, it is not wise to me.
who, no pity for her mother who will be left alone by the faithless man, the rover, going to sea at the first north wind with a girl for booty. He's just going to leave as soon as the wind changes and take her daughter. Was not that the way the Phrygian shepherd entered Lacedaemon and carried Helen off to Troy? This guy's just another Paris. You know, Paris is his cousin. They just roam the world and steal women. And you're just going to let him. I can't believe you're just going to let him. Virgil gives us this awesome epic simile.
Oh, here we go.
One sees, I'm on page 209 in the note. One sees at times a top that a wound up thong snapped into a spin. When all eyes for the sport, boys drive it round a court in a great circle, sweeping curves on the ground, flicked by the whip, while the small boys in fascination bend above the rounded boxwood as it whirls, given new life at each stroke of the lash. So restless, wheeling like a spinning top, Amata sped on, driven through the town amid her hardy townsmen.
Wow.
Just like a little boy, a group of little boys plays with a top and spins it and just licks it with a whip, and it keeps spinning. Amata is Juno's toy. She's playing with her, just whipping her around the town. That's me. All right, shows up, Alecto, the Fury shows up at Turnus's too. He's asleep and she disguises herself as an elderly priestess, something like that, and says, you should go fight for Lavinia. And he's so, shut up, old lady. It's pretty harsh. It's roughly what he says. Shut up and leave war to men. And just a second, Alex.
Did he just say that to the Fury?
Yeah, only she was disguised as a priestess, an old priestess, like an old lady. And she says, and so she puts herself in her normal form and she says, look at me now, sunk in decay. See how old age in me is too far gone for the truth, deluding me with battles between kings and dreams of fear. Look at these dreams of mine. I come to you from the Black Sisters' home and bring war and extinction in my hand. And she hurls a torch at him as it plants it in his chest. Of course, this is like a dream for him. And he wakes up and it says, lust of steel raged in him. Brute insanity of war. He is off his rocker. I am going to kill anybody who gets in my way.
Dang.
Yeah. And says, while Turnus is filled with recklessness, she goes and sets up make sure that arrow hits that pet deer. And I'm going to make sure nobody just comes for an apology. But their first reaction is, kill them all. Job done.
And the poor deer, like, is dying for hours while this little, while this little girl is.
Oh, I know.
Just
Yes, it
crying
doesn't
on
die
the side.
quick. That's very sad.
Yeah.
Pets,
Oh.
pets are hard. Pets die.
Also, it says on line 529, Amada sped on, driven through the town amid her hardy townsmen. Worse, she feigned Bacchic possession,
Yes.
daring greater sin and greater madness.
Yeah.
So she had a strategy to all this.
She had an insanity strategy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pretend I'm possessed by Dionysus. I'm gonna go raving like the women go raving through the woods and stir all the women out.
Aren't they the ones that would rip you limb from limb?
Oh, they would. They would.
I would watch
Famously, one of
myself.
them ripped the head off her own son. This was a play we didn't read last year. I'd be glad. It's called The Bad Guy. Okay, anyway. So they all come to the palace and they start shouting at Latinus. These jerks came to kill our pets, steal our women, and who knows what else they're up to. We've got to fight these guys. All right, listen.
So funny.
This is key, because we already said Latinus is good king because he is thinking of more than one side. I want you to listen to this part. Latinus, though, like a sea cliff, stood fast. Like a sea cliff that when the great sea comes to shatter on it, and the waves like hounds give tongue on every side, holds grandly on, though reefs and foaming rocks thunder offshore, and seaweed flung against it streams away. But when no power was given him to defeat their blinded counsel, and things took their course at cruel Juno's nod, Father Latinus, calling upon all the gods, on heaven's empty air cried, I am breached by fate, wrecked, swept away by a storm. You'll pay the price, poor people, with your sacrilegious blood. This wickedness will haunt you, and the grim punishment Turnus will come home to you. But it will be too late to pray to the gods. For me, I've earned my rest. Though entering haven, I am deprived of happiness and death. He said no more, but shut himself away and dropped the reins of rule over the state. You guys are nuts. I don't like what you're planning. I give up. You won't listen to reason. I am so done with you. Good luck with that. I'm going to go shut myself in a room and get a cup of tea and read a book. Have fun with the choice you've made. I don't know about the tea in the book. I made that part.
I don't know about the TV.
That's what I would do if I were done with people. So, okay, he's trying to do the best he can for his people, but I abdicate authority. You just do whatever you want. I'm done trying. So don't respond now, but respond in writing this week. That's okay. That's okay. So they go, because Latinus is going to let them in, they open the gates of war. Those gates that the Romans are going to have into it. Oh, and by the way, I just wanted to, I'm going to go back to the very first book. Do you remember Jupiter was telling his daughter Venus all the great things he was going to give Aeneas? He's got world, future without end. And it says, the gates of war will then be shut. Inside, what's trapped inside? Unholy furor. Squatting on cruel weapons, hands in chain behind him by 100 links of bronze, will grind his teeth and howl with bloodied mouth. When you close the gates of war, you trap furor inside. They just opened them.
Yeah.
They just opened them. Latinus was enjoined to declare war on the people of Aeneas by setting wide the grim gates, but he would not touch them, only turned away from the repellent work and shut himself in the interior darkness. But who opens them? Oh, Juno. So she just gives them a push. Let's let the furor out. Yeah. And then we get, for the rest of book 7, we get a list of people who are going to fight in this war. Those of you who read the Iliad with me last year, does this remind you of anything? Lists of people.
Huge catalog.
The Armada.
The catalog of ships in Book 4 of the Iliad. Homer decides to tell us page after page after page of everyone who fought a ship to fight
That
Troy
was terrible.
and where they would come. That was
I hated it.
He gives us a little miniature one that's only a few pages, and he ends with Turnus. He's the leader, and he's got an awesome shield. Did you notice his shield? You know, we've talked about these Greek and Roman shields with pictures embossed on them, and some of them are very elaborate. He has a picture of Io. It says, Io appeared with lifted horns and hair grown coarse. That instant changed in the huge blazon into a cow. So, just very, very quickly, story of Io. Io is a young lady who Jupiter took a liking to because he does that sort of thing. And but Juno caught him with her, and he just magicked her into a cow really fast because apparently that's the best he could think of. And Juno came, she's not stupid. And she said, well, that's a nice looking cow. Let's get the cow. Oh, can I have the cow? Because I don't really want to give you the cow. I want the cow. If you love me, you'll give me the cow. She knows it's a girl, not a cow. So she sent a watchman over with Argus, who has 100 eyes. He has eyes all over his body, so he never sleeps. You know, so he's a good watchman. And Mercury has to come put him to sleep and kill him while he's asleep. And then Io runs away. She runs and runs. She ends up in Egypt. Juno sends this stinging fly after her. I don't even remember if she ever gets to be a woman again, frankly. That's where the story ends in my head. But my point is, in the story, Turnus on his shield has a picture of another episode of Juno getting angry at somebody. He's walking around with Juno being angry on his shield. And it doesn't ever end well for the person with whom Juno was angry, not in the stories. So we'll see if it ends well for Aeneas. But Juno's not really pleased with Turnus either, you know, if Juno's pleased with anyone. But so Aeneas gets a message, and he says, he hears in this message that it's from the river god. Here is your home, your hearth gods, fixed and sure. Now is no time to let go or give way to fear at threats of war. He says, you need to travel upstream because there is a king there of an Arcadian tribe, King Evander. Arcadians are Greeks. Arcadia is in Greece. Oh my gosh, they're sending him to go get help from Greeks. But if you remember, he had prophecy, it was just a little line, and help from Greeks where you would least expect it. The river god says, go up there to Evander. They're always at war with Latins. These Turnus' people, they're always at war with them. They'll join you. Go upriver. And so Aeneas leaves his men. Do you remember that in the Iliad, someone important to the plot of the Iliad, left the scene of action? Who did it? Who left the scene of action, withdrew himself from the scene? Achilles. Achilles said, I am not going to fight anymore. I hope you all die, or at least enough of you to make you sorry. Of the ones who are dead are sorry. Because that's pretty much what he says.
You see Achilles do something called a cancer.
But Aeneas leaves. Why? To get help. Achilles leaves because his personal glory was infringed. Is it really? Aeneas leaves to get help for his people. And when he leaves, he leaves his son there and tells them to stay in the camp. He shows up, and it turns out, who would have thunk, King Evander once met his dad, Anchises. Once Anchises was traveling, and they met, and they were actually guest friends. They hosted each other and exchanged gifts. So we're tight. We're tight with each other. We're already friends. Come on in. Hey, join us. We happen to be celebrating a festival to Hercules. Join us, Aeneas, in this festival of Hercules. let me tell you about Hercules. Once upon a time, this is Evander talking. Once upon a time, Hercules lived nearby, and there was this big monster named Cacus, and he stole Hercules' cows that Hercules had already stolen from someone else. And Hercules got mad, and he went and he killed the guy, he buried him under a mountain of rock, and he made the area safe for travelers again. And we always celebrated festivals for Hercules. And Aeneas, great, I will join the festival. And it goes on and on. And you're thinking, why are we talking so much about Hercules? This is a really random thing, Virgil. But do you remember that last week we saw a description of Caesar Augustus, his shade, his pre-existent, pre-incarnate shade in the underworld? And Anchises said, not even Hercules will command and wander as much of the world as the Caesar Augustus. Caesar Augustus is a better Hercules. Hercules came and he fought a monster. There's a monster waiting back at his camp. His name is Turnus. He's been turned into a monster by a fury. Hercules fought a monster, and yes, you can go fight a monster. And I can almost prove Virgil means this because it says when they leave. Just a second, I gotta find it. For Aeneas they led a special mount, all blanketed with a lion skin. What does Hercules always wear?
A lion
A lion skin. You're the new Hercules. Yay, go get him. But first, says Evander, I'm going to give you my son, Pallas. Hey, Pallas, go with Aeneas. He will teach you to be a wonderful warrior. I'm a little old, a little stiff in the joints, but you go with him. He's young and spry. He will teach you. And by the way, there are some people upriver, away from me. They have a king named Mezentius. He is just an ugly, nasty piece of work. He tortures people. I won't even, if he tells you something he does, you'll have to go back and look and see the nasty thing he does to people. And they drove him out, they hate him, and he went and joined up with Turnus. They'll join you, they hate him, they just want revenge on you. Go get some more help from them. So Aeneas is gathering allies all over, I guess I just answered what does the king Evander entrust Aeneas with? So there we go, his son, okay. And Evander shows him around before he sends him away. And it says, they saw his cattle lowing everywhere in what is now Rome's forum and her fashionable quarter. Evander lives in Rome. Evander lives in the site of Rome. He lives nestled in those 7 hills. That's someday going to be Rome. He sends him off, and Venus had complained to her husband, well, you made Achilles armor, but you never made my son any armor. You made my son some armor. So she does, or he does. And I asked you, and this really isn't a fair question, I think, to the ones of you who didn't read the Iliad with me, so I apologize for that. But those of you who did, do you remember what was on Achilles' shield? The special God-made shield. It was a giant picture.
It showed 2 cities at war and
It showed 2 cities, very good, Alex, at war, one city at war and one city at peace. And the city at war is what you'd expect. The city at peace isn't all rosy. I mean, there's people dancing and having a good time. There's also somebody being tried for murder. It's not all great. In other words, on Achilles' shield this is just the way the world is. This is just the way the world is. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes there's peace, sometimes there's war, and even when there's peace, it's not all rosy. This is just the way the world is. What is on Aeneas' shield?
the story of Rome.
Well, this is the way the world will be, right? This is the way the world is. This is what will be, and it's going to be great.
Finally got his head out of the past.
He got his head out of the past and he's carrying on his arm, it says, he felt joy in their pictures, taking up upon his shoulder the destined acts and fame of his descendants. He left Troy with his dad on his shoulder. Now he's got a shield of the future on his shoulders, and he's feeling good. And in the middle, well, okay, we have Romulus and Remus. We have the Sabine women. If you don't already know these stories, you will know them in just a couple of weeks because they're all in Living's Early History of Rome, which we're going to read next. Horatius Cocles, who defended the bridge, Horatius of the bridge. The goose who warned that the Gauls were climbing the Capitol. And in the middle, which do you think is the most important thing? Augustus Caesar.
Yeah.
Pair for a poem, fighting Antony and Cleopatra, those nasties, and taking out the final opposition. And it says, it's not even just Cleopatra fighting. It says, never turning her head, the picture of Cleopatra, to see twin snakes of death behind, while monster forms of gods of every race, and the dog god Anubis barking, held their weapons up against our Neptune, Venus, and Minerva. On the shield, it's even the gods fighting the gods. Aeneas already got to see that at Troy. You know, he got revealed to him, hey, Neptune has got his trident, and he's using it like a lever to pry down your walls. The gods are fighting the gods. When Augustus Caesar there, he's fighting. You've all seen pictures, those crazy Egyptian gods, and they all have animal heads. Very creepy. Falcons and jackals, and it is kind of cool. A little creepy, kind of cool. So he comes back with allies and with the future of Rome on his shoulder. And he comes back, but in his absence, unfortunately, things haven't been going well. The rash prince, Turnus, governed by Furor, he's crazy, has taken on the Greek camp, or the Trojan camp. And do you remember what he tries to do? He tries to do something to hinder them. The fleet, okay, bring up fire, he said. I'm going to burn their ships down.
Oh my goodness,
This already happened. Okay, the women already did this. They were also kind of stirred up into a frenzy. But who in the Iliad tried to burn the ships? Who's the ship burner? He led those Trojans all the way to the Greek camp and had torches in his hand, and only big Ajax and little Ajax could stop him. Hector came to burn the ships. So here's the problem I'm having as the reader of the Aeneid. Aeneas has already been called a Paris several times, but now Turnus is a Hector. Like, I can't figure out who's the Achilles here. It said there will be another Achilles. Is it Turnus? Is it Aeneas? Which side is which? What's the analogy? I don't know, because it keeps moving around. Now he's burning the ships. He's Hector. Fortunately for the ships, if you recall, the weird circumstance that they were loved by a goddess, and they promised that the ships, when they got done being ships, that they would just turn into water nymphs and swim away. How awesome. So the ships see the fire, and oh, it's time to turn into water nymphs, and they just swim away. Unfortunately, they just swim to Aeneas and say, hey, your camp's being attacked. We're your ships. We used to be your ships. And we just thought you should know that your camp is being attacked.
I don't know how I would react to that.
Still either.
Just like,
but he seems to take it well.
I-
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will go back. Before he left, as I mentioned before, he said, to stay inside the camp. Here, I had it and I've lost it. You're gonna have to trust me on that one, maybe. gonna find it. It's all in yellow and everything in my book, and I'm not gonna find it. And then after you leave, I will. There's a line where it says, "Hey guys, you still with me?" Aeneas said, "Stay inside the camp. Don't go out and fight. No heroics. No, I'm gonna go out and be glorious in front of everyone. We're all in this together. Stay with your companions and protect them." But two guys get an idea. Right? And they're guys we've met before. Nisus and Euryalus. I told you to remember those two. The guys in the foot race, where one of them fell down in blood, and the other one tripped the second guy, so the third guy, his best friend, could win. Because we look out for each other. And Nisus gets an idea. He gets an itch. I really want to do something. I think I could sneak out and get Aeneas to come back. He doesn't know that the ship's already told him to come back.
Oh, no.
And I think we could go out and we might do some grand exploit.
Let's go be a hero.
Aeneas told you not to do this. But he says, and I just want to take a moment and really think about the statement. This urge to action, do the gods instill it? Or is each man's desire a god to him? I want to go out and do something great. Do the gods instill it? Or is each man's desire a god to him? What does he mean by that? What do you think?
Maybe free will.
Free will?
That sounds like free will to me.
It does.
Is it the gods who control our destiny, or is it our own free will, our own gods to ourselves?
But what does it sound like? And I agree. What does it sound like when your desire becomes a god to you? What kind of person have you become?
A democratic person.
Plato. I don't even know that I'm asking a particular question. That's why you're having trouble answering, because there's no particular. It's just an amazing phrase. Does each man's desire become a god to him? It made me think in the book of James, where it says, don't say that God tempts you, because we are tempted by our own desires. We're dragged off by our own desires. Don't blame God. It was your own desire to do it. You wanted it. And your desire became a god to you. I feel like that's a really good question to ask. Do the gods instill this? Does God instill this? Or is my desire becoming a god to me? Yeah.
It's like you become your own idol.
Say that
It's
again.
like you become your own idol.
You become your own idol. I think Nisus is asking a very deeply philosophical
Or
question.
your idol is ruling you. Like you're so set on your own desires that your desires are ruling you.
Yes. But Nisus is wise in the sense that he asked the question. I wonder if I'm inspired to do this, or I just want to do something great. And so I'm getting carried away with it. Unfortunately, Nisus doesn't stop and poke around in that statement. He doesn't really examine it. He's just like, I'm doing it. I don't care, I'm doing it. Euryalus, are you in? And it says, taken aback, his love of glory stirred. Euryalus said, it's not actually in the book. Euryalus says, yes, let us be off. And does this remind you, again, you Iliad people, does this remind you of any episode in the Iliad?
There were so many times.
Let me narrow it down. Two guys go out at night and go on a rampage and kill a bunch of the enemy while they're sleeping.
Odysseus and that other guy.
Diomedes. Yes, to go spying. Do you remember?
Killing like
And they went on a killing
fourth of
spree.
the Trojan force outside the wall.
And so they went on a killing spree. Nisus and Euryalus are not going out to go on a killing spree, supposedly. But they do. They're going out to get Aeneas. We're going to slip between enemy lines, and we're going to bring word to our commander to come back soon, which is an honorable thing. But they are distracted, aren't they, by loot and by glory. We can kill them. They kill a bunch of guys. Now, during this dark, Think about it. During all this dark, they could have been creeping around them silently and they could already be halfway to Aeneas. But I don't know how much time it takes to kill a bunch of people and steal their stuff. I don't have any experience in this, but I think it takes a little time. And unfortunately, one of them, I can't ever remember which one it is, sees an awesome helmet. Love the helmet. Wearing the helmet. On a night with a full moon and no clouds. Metal on my head. I'm glowing. Now his head is glowing, but not because it's an omen. The moonlight is bouncing off his helmet. And the enemy see him immediately. It says, deep night under the boughs and weight of booty slowed Euryalus.
Oh, we found our Achilles.
Maybe so. We forgot, we being Mrs. Euryalus, that we're all in this together. We weren't supposed to go on exploits of glory, personal glory, and we're going to die for it. They catch them. Of course, just like in the foot race, one doesn't leave the other behind. I will go back and rescue you, even if we both die. But you can't. We are Romans. We are a group. We are going to be the finest army the world has ever seen. Sparta accepted, perhaps. And you cannot be a warrior solo. Not in an army. Because we will all do our own thing and we will all die. We gotta stick together. If we start stripping, we're in the Iliad, there's just stripping armor off people left and right, off dead bodies, it's gonna stop. And, there's people with swords all around me and everything. I'm just gonna stop and take this guy's belt.
Exactly.
What? No, don't do that. You can't do that. We have basically, I have just answered all the questions without even asking you for the answers, and I'm sorry about that. Back at home, okay, back at home in the camp, Turnus is still on the rampage. Do you remember he even gets trapped inside the gates? Like they open the gates to let their friends in, but some of the enemy come in and they shut the gates. And Turnus is just like having a wild animal trapped inside your house, knocking over the furniture and breaking things. Turnus is just on the rampage. Finally, they figure out what's happening enough that he gets away from them and he climbs up over the wall and jumps in the water. But they say, here's what he says, running around. Here is no bridegroom's royal house from Amata, no Ardean inner court to comfort Turnus with his native walls. Your enemy's fortress camp is what you see, and not the faintest chance of getting away. He's told that. But smiling calmly at him, Turnus answered, step forward if you have the heart for it. Come within range. You will be telling Priam Achilles has been found again, and here. That was all. I'm your Achilles, even people. He said he's a bit like Menelaus at one point. I skipped over this part, but he said, I miss my betrothed too. I'm not the only one who gets upset when your woman gets stolen. Like Menelaus, I get upset when my woman gets stolen too. But now, and I guess Achilles got his woman stolen too. I'm your Achilles, and it says, high rage and mindless lust for slaughter drove the passionate man against his enemies. He is burning with furor. And the question is, does furor win? Because furor looks pretty nasty. He is just, I'm picturing like he's got a sword in each hand and he's waving around and shooting arrows with his feet. Like he's awesome, like a whirlwind warrior. And it's pretty amazing, it's pretty scary. Or will pietas, clear-headed attention to duty, which one wins? Yes. It was really kind of a rhetorical question because I didn't think there was a mystery. And it's probably not a spoiler to tell you Aeneas is going to win this war because Aeneas is going to be the founder of the line of Romans. But This was what Romans, this is what you avoid as a Roman, right? We are clear-headed, level-headed. We work together as a team. That's what makes Rome great. And these crazy people who just go off on their own, this ends poorly. This week, make your outline. Tell me whether or not you think King Latinus acts as a good king in dealing with this, all right? And finish the Aeneid for me. And how you're going to do it. And I will see you next week.
I said, did you really